Only humility will lead us to unity, and unity will lead us to peace.
Go to the market and sell your products.
Welcome to Press Center on Dott Television. An hour we look at issues and have some analytic perspective to them with the hope of setting agenda towards a better nation. I am your anchor person, Godfrey Obaka, and I honestly consider this a special edition, special in the sense that I have a special person right here in the studio, in the person of winning author of Distortion, the Distortion series, right activist, founder and publisher of Light Ray Media. Lady E, you are welcome.
A pleasure to be here with you, Godfrey.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a minute.
Pursuing you to come over for this program, it was as if I was wooing you for a dance in a village square.
And now we're here in the village square.
That's the village square. with global spectators all over.
And they can't wait to see how this dance is going to turn out. And, we will delight them.
Surely it will turn out well.
Okay.
It will turn out, with you in the studio, it will turn out well.
We don't have a choice.
Thank you so very much for making it to the Dott family, talking about the Dott television, global television here in Asa. Well, we consciously chose this topic considering that her award-winning book is titled Distortion, and it has to do with a major character, the protagonist, the person of Abu, and the kind of struggles and destruction that he encountered with the theme of mental health and all that. So all that put in perspective, we also consider that of late, Lady Ejiro has done so much passionately about crusading for the Nigerian youth with respect to their right to education, And in one of our quotes, she did say that if you will task education or knowledge rather, then of course development will be scuttled. How can we start from that point? How come you have been so passionate with the issue of the Nigerian youth and access to education?
Every civilized, accomplished civilization, any country where you see that they are aiming for global advancement, there is growth. You can see infrastructural development. You would see cultural diversity, enrichment. You will see a situation where a society understands not just their values, but within their values, you will see it express itself in academics. And academics could express itself even in architecture. It expresses itself in the cultural appearance of its own people. It expresses itself in the belief system of a people and how they treat themselves and the character building of a people. In Nigeria here, what has happened to us is that we have received distorted education in terms of academic learning.
That word again, distortion.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're living in a distorted society. Nigeria is a distortion of some sort, created by somebody's idea of what Nigeria should look like. I mean, let me give you, for example, you remember that story about the Mungo Park discovering River Niger?
River Niger, yeah.
I mean, that was just bullocks.
Okay.
He never discovered River Niger. If he is writing that story to his European counterparts, maybe when he was back then in Britain, for example, and he's talking about it, and he now says, oh, to my people in England, I discovered a place. In that context, that would work. But to now make it a situation where even our curriculum design as Nigerians, as teachers, educators, principals, commissioners for education, right? CIEs, all these chief inspectors officers, you expect that, even schedule officers for textbooks, where you expect them to know what they should know and then critique and question some of the content we are giving to our children as education, you realize that even they don't know their own history. They do not have the knowledge. This knowledge that was taxed from us the story of Mungo Park, the story of other people who came to Africa.
Yeah.
What they did was they taxed our knowledge so that we don't have access to it. And they hid it from us. And that is what we're about to do with our children again. We want to tax knowledge so that certain people are the ones in charge of the information our children receive. And when they receive only information from a monolithic source, yeah, you enable monopoly. And when monopoly begins to thrive, you go to school, but education doesn't happen. Knowledge isn't acquired, and knowledge is not integrated even into their value system and the character building and the desire for a better, efficient Nigeria in making.
Okay. So, given that scenario, would you say education should be a business and should be addressed as such, or should be a social responsibility, or some blend of both?
It's a multi-pronged thing, really. What drives knowledge acquisition is actual social infrastructural responsibility. And when I talk about that, it means that we want to democratize learning so that it is accessible. A situation where knowledge is limited to a few people. Look at what is happening with the AI of today. AI and the idea of robotics, the concept of even intelligence, it is now in the hands of a few people. And what have they done? They have smartly stolen, plagiarized, right? All the knowledge of human history ever written down. And then they have them on their platform where they regulate it. And some of them make sure that they make money from that. Meanwhile, you have already stolen from the general population who have contributed to the wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, the pool.
The pool of that knowledge.
Yeah.
So you now take it and then you tax us for it. Do you get me? You subscribe for this, you subscribe for that. You want to tell a story with AI, you have to get, if you get the free version, you don't get all the benefits. You have to pay extra to get the tools and the other techniques. So a situation where every knowledge itself, it starts to that point where they will now decide which information you will access, how often you will access, if you will access it, and why you must access it through payment. So you enrich a few people why you've already from what you've already stolen. So we've seen this cycle over and over again in society. And that's why as a people in Nigeria, we have to wake up to realize that this is the knowledge era. That is where we're at.
Okay.
An era where knowledge is everything. The fourth industrialization we're seeing is a knowledge-based system. A knowledge-based system where people drive what is going to happen in terms of the power is information. So information now, intelligence is our newest crude oil. The question is, what are we all doing to make sure that we don't become those who are left behind? And that's why in a society now, what we have done in Lightray, our organization, is that we realize that, oh, there's something we must do. What is that thing? We must begin to understand that it is those who are in control of knowledge of today that will determine how much you know, how expansive that knowledge will become, the variety of that knowledge, the depth of it, the richness of it as well. We need to position ourselves to also own the machinery, the platform, the architecture, the framework, to see to it that we too manage our own African knowledge. Till tomorrow, it is so much of Western knowledge that is so pervasive. Our African knowledge are not mainstream as they should be. But thank God for social media. I mean, for goodness sakes. Right now, we are seeing the proliferation of African stories, African perspective, African narratives, and African insight into solutions and, all of that. So it's time for us to position ourselves to also become power, intelligent knowledge brokers. We cannot be left behind in the scheme of things right now.
All right. Having said that, I think it's important at this point that we take a brief look at one of your outings where you had to promote reading culture, considering that we cannot be talking about knowledge and what we can do with knowledge when we have a population that hardly even ever read. And so we expect a clip to be played concerning an outing where the Lightray had to promote reading culture,
right?
Especially among our school children, and how that has made people to get more involved, better involved with the issue of reading culture. Yeah.
Launched what is called the Literary Distortion Student Literary Festival. It is the first of its kind. It's a literary festival dedicated to students, especially in the creative and literary aspect of what we do. Because we discovered that footballers get attention. We see people in even other aspects of comedy, you see how they are thriving. But we discovered that the persons who are in the literary and creative space, such as writers, storytellers, filmmakers, they're not getting the kind of positioning and recognition as well as financial leverage that they deserve.
Okay, so
In fact, this was the first time Delta State celebrated a World Book Day officially.
was that the one at the government house?
Yes,
So
we worked hand in hand with the head of service. They bought into the idea for us to actually formally inaugurate a flag off for Delta's first ever World Book Day. And it became imperative, like you rightly noted earlier, there is a death of reading, but there is also concurrently running an interest and upsurge in reading among Nigerians too. There's a revitalization, there's a renaissance happening. But the question is, how do we tap into a situation where in our public schools, where the death of reading has become a problem? What do I mean? In the last edition we had at the Press Center Government House, when we did the Literary Distortion Orientation Festival, when we gathered together the first ever Student Literary and Creative Society festival event, we discovered from the young people that they say that in the society in which they live in, where social media has become the currency, that the only way they will become relevant is if they are as well trend like the so-called most dubious kind of people we know. I don't want to mention the names of those people.
Okay.
So when the young people tell us that, oh my God, we cannot survive in this society that only rewards people who trend for all the bad things, people who can show they have money. So a young man asks a very important question, ma'am, how do we cope in a society where even as 16 as I am, my friends are already driving their own cars because they're able to scam people? We have so many pressure that we're facing in schools. Many of us don't want to read anymore because we feel school is a
That's another
scam.
level of distortion, I think.
It is a serious information and knowledge distortion.
Okay. And if not well handled, could lead to
It's
mental
already
stress, which also reminds us of your protagonist, Abu, with the caste discrimination and ancestral crosses.
Yes.
Through a harrowing journey of that protagonist.
Yes.
How are those struggles and journeys reflected in the average Nigerian youth of today from your interaction with them?
Exactly.
Through your reading club and some of your crusades, media crusades, because I'm aware that this is just a bus stop. I know Dott is just a bus stop. I followed you through Arise, DBN and all that. And I had to ask you, when will you come to Macedonia to also address,
because we have to be in Macedonia.
We have to be in Macedonia.
Macedonia
needs us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And our young children, they say school is scam. It is coming from somewhere.
Okay.
It means that they are not having the right kind of teachers who teach them properly. We've seen situations where teachers are already tired of the work. Why? Because it does not pay as it should, even though it demands so much more out of them. Many of them really do not have substance. Our children are inundated with social media attention, misinformation, misdirection, and all the kind of distortions you can think of, twisted storylines. And so when they go online, they don't even know which information is true anymore. So our young people are beginning to realize that if we go online, we may not know the truth. And if we're back in school, we're not getting the best. But those who are online using whatever information they have, they seem to be scaling, they seem to be succeeding. What can we do differently as children? And now they are realizing that if we don't give them the right education, many of them will not finish school. Many say the people who trend are those who nobody recognizes.
I met him in these premises. He was in this same studio, sitting on this same chair a couple of less than an hour ago.
And I'm so happy because we are now rewarding literature, which is one of the things we are fighting in literary. We have to reward literature.
Yeah.
We have to reward the creative industry.
Exactly.
And the creative industry includes authors, poets, writers, griots, all of us in their various form. Now, that's why we started the first ever Student Literary and Creative Festival in Delta State, so that the government will know that this is an industry that needs to be developed. Everybody cannot be engineers. Everybody cannot be a scientist. Everybody cannot be somebody who is into politics. But we also need people who are in politics, who are smart, who understand what it takes to run governance, who understand what it takes to create infrastructure.
Is it not said that when readers are leaders, then you get the best out of the public space and governance? To what extent are our current leaders actually readers?
Unfortunately, many of them are not readers. That's the problem, industry or even their own departments or ministries. We have seen that. We've seen some commissioners that are appointed and they have no business being there in that particular position where they are for that particular ministry, as the case may be. And when they are there, rather than now get themselves ready and read more about that department or ministry and get to know how do they do it other places and then adapt it to the fact that how will it work better instead for the Nigerian Delta space. We don't see all of that happening. I have trained so many persons within politics. For those people, I give them kudos. They come to us, they say we need training so that we could be better. We help them, guide them when it comes to how do you have the best framework for your ministry, the right infrastructural design that we sort out the issues, particularly in that ministry. So what we are saying today is this. We need leaders who understand that reading is a lifestyle, is a way of life. Look at the world today, the country that are the most pedestal. China is there. Right now, China is learning how to read Mandarin, Chinese. Do you know what that means? It means that any country, engagement and business transaction, what happens is they are going to elevate their own currency as well. The Nigerian currency ought to be higher, in fact, within the African space, for example. But we don't have that happening. And that's because we do not understand that the knowledge of economics, the current economics we are running in Nigeria is faulty. We borrow too many ideas from other countries. We could do policies that directly affect Nigerians, but we don't do that. And what does that tell you? It tells you that we don't sit down to understand what is the problem in Nigeria and how do we proffer a Nigerian solution to a Nigerian problem.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back to issues of reading and improving on literary knowledge and also leadership. But there's an issue that also borders on distortion. It's getting to about a year now that some young men in Ozoro, somewhere in Delta State, distorted, as it were, a festival, you know, an ancient festival that has been carried over to this time where issues of fertility, and they say people who want to have to bear children, they come out and, you know, the gods will help to fertilize them. Some young men distorted the whole essence of that festival, and what was supposed to be a fertility festival turned out to be a raping festival. And you were one of those that came up with some public outrage with respect to what should be done to those boys. Close to 1 year after, any follow-up with respect to what has been done to, one, the women that were raped, as it were, and the young men who went about the raping spree?
No, for those young men, I mean, I worked together with the Delta State Police Command. We worked together extensively. The PPRO, we were together on this conversation, and that's why we were able to get the support of the likes of Deshuwela, the BBC, all of them. They came to me, they said, Lady E, we need to interview you on this, and what is the solution to this? I even worked with Beckley, who was also in charge, like the PG of Ozoro Kingdom. And I also got in touch with the chairman of the Ole Kingdom, as it is, which covers the entire axis there. That is the Isoko South, rather. So at the level of the Ole headquarters. So what we now realized was that we understood that there was a problem. We have a distortion, a parental raising distortion. What do I mean? We identified that part of the problem with those young people was because, one, we live in a society where they have distorted the concept of masculinity. In the manosphere, where the conversation has been about promoting negative, toxic male behavior.
Toxic, indeed?
Yes, indeed. Because any man who thinks he can rape a woman Any man who thinks he can sexually assault a woman, any man who thinks he has a right to a woman's body, any man who thinks he can talk about a woman in a lewd form, you are committing rape. And the VAP Act is already elevating itself to that point where if a woman does not give you consent to touch her body, consent to be in her space, consent to talk, even touch or point to her body, you're committing rape. We've come to that point now.
Yeah.
And so with your colleagues, don't be lewd with your people in your estate or community.
That's
or in social.
instructive indeed.
You don't want to be lewd with that. Don't say you are making fun of. No. That have actually captured and they are getting their kind of social, traditional distortion that is happening is because in many homes, many parents and fathers in particular do not sit down with their sons to talk about this. And I'm happy you talked about Abu in my book, Distortion.
Yeah.
Abu grew up in a family where people distorted the history of a tradition, just like you talked earlier about, for example, the caste system. And I'm happy that it was through our book, Distortion, we were able to ensure that the abolition is beginning to happen in eastern Nigeria. Yeah. I mean, Oguta community in Oguta local government area in Imo State has already done that. They have abolished Osu, and that is because we took the work of distortion of that story about people. How do we distort our traditions? Distort ancient narratives and norms and beliefs. So we needed to change that kind of distortion. We needed to correct it. And we have used novels to do that. So novels are a powerful social change mechanism, tools, and forms of activities that can engage the mind and help people know that you cannot continue on a path that is wrong. And that's why we say, if we want our children to lead well, to become better parents, they too need to read. Many parents these days do not read enough to see how they can become better parents.
Lady E, you just reminded me of Professor Chinua Lumogu, Albert Achebe. You understand? Who told us that serious and good art has always existed to help to serve humanity. You are now telling us to what extent your work, Distortion, has helped to bring up to public notice some of the issues in our society, like the caste system, and how it has also helped to an extent now, provided a way out, a kind of solution, so that people begin to see a social equality among humanity and not a class segregated kind of society. In which other ways would you think that literature can bring about a better society and a more harmonized humanity?
That's why the next book we have, which is called The Distortion of Adasa, which is a follow-up of the earlier Distortion. In fact, the Distortion of Adasa just won...
You're talking of the Distortion series?
Yes, the Distortion series. I have to mention it. In fact, it just won the regional award winner for the TYB Young Adult Literature for 2025 last year, November.
All right.
Yes. So what this particular book is now going to address is the distortion of our young children's identity. We live in a society where we are beginning to tag our children as witches by so-called religious prophets and GOs and pastors and all of that. We had to go as far as Akwa Ibom State to begin this investigation for this book. And we tapped into the real life stories of young children.
Is that talking about the investigative journalist in you?
Of course, as always.
Okay, brought now into literature.
It has to go together because they are two sides of the same coin.
Okay, good to hear.
Good side of the same coin. Yeah. So what we now did, we now discovered that there is this tendency among our young people when they bring so-called house help. Let us note that the VAP Act says that there's no child that should be called a house help. If you call any child a house help, the VAP Act will hold you and you will be fined and you will go to prison. The law is against calling anybody a houseboy or a house girl. But what we've also now realized is that because of poverty in our society, this is why leaders have to be readers. It is easy to quell the poverty in Nigeria, but we are having leaders who are just thinking in terms of greed and corruption and siphoning of money. They do not understand that all of that money we've invested in the country, because a reader will know when you invest that money properly into Nigeria, you're going to get much more and you're going to reduce the poverty in the society. So what we now realize is that many, these religiouspreneurs, because that's what they have become, This religiouspreneur, they get into spaces and then they are lying to our children. They are using distorted ancient narrative to say that a house, these small children, they bring from the villages to the house, right? Who is trying to leave poverty because the mother and father can no longer cope with raising the children. They now bring them to the city. The next thing you know, one useless religiospreneur will now label that child, he is a witch. Let us confess that child. Let us remove the disease from that child. So what we now did was we now made Nigerians know that through the distortion of Adasa, we are tackling another mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And what is that mental health crisis? It has to do with what is called somnambulism, audio distortion, mental distortion of the mind. It is happening to so many of us, even adults do not know it. So what we did is that we brought this correlation together.
Well, I think I've had a number of those Billisms, a number of those high-sounding words from you that I think I deserve to go on a water break.
Let's go on a water break.
I'll go on a water break. When we come back, you will explain a lot more about all those, putting those symbolisms into full perspective, literary perspective. Then we will also look at how some of these books can get into a wider audience through possible cinematography. And we come back on the other side of the break.
We impose extra burden on the masses. I feel your pain.
Only humility will lead us to unity, and unity will lead us to peace.
Go to the market and sell your products.
You are welcome back, viewer, to Press Center at Dott Television. And we still have in many ways, the highly indescribable Lady E right here in the studio, an award-winning journalist, investigative journalist, peerless broadcaster, and of course, award-winning literary author. And there were a number of things she was explaining before we went on that much-deserved water break. With respect to Abu, the protagonist in our book, and the mental challenges that he went through, and how that also tries to bring up the issues of youth in Nigeria struggling with mental stability in a setting where it does appear as if leadership is failing by the day. You have talked about the need for reading culture. How can we have reading culture in an economically depressed setting and poorly equipped libraries, public libraries? When last did you visit any of our public libraries?
I have traveled the length and breadth of Delta State, and I can tell you that the state of our Delta libraries are nothing to write home about. I worked with our wonderful, extraordinary head of service, Dr. Mrs. Mininim Useji, and library. And not just Delta. I have gone across all the libraries in Nigeria, and I've also begun to see there's also a problem. The fact that even what is supposed to be a national library that is supposed to lead the trend has suffered for the last 13 years. Ordinary structure has not been done in the last 13 years in Abuja. That tells you that even our leaders themselves, where they position the value of education, is simply to exploit it and not to enable its survival. We've seen where monies are dedicated to libraries. They are not used for the development of libraries. I got data and information that are shocking. You have commissioners that are given the task to make sure that all our students get access to quality books. In fact, what I want to drive now is to see a situation where the Delta State government and the governor himself in particular, Governor Oborowore, we see to it that there is a supporting grant given to authors and publishers to make the publication and accessibility of books, especially literary text, available and easy for our students to have. Because we see that overseas. You have the British Trust for things like this. You have so many other trusts, even in America and elsewhere. They are dedicated to make sure that children have the right kind of literary information. Because at the end of the day, if your library, the only book you can see is a 1960 engineering textbook, we are way past that. We're already doing speed trains. We're already going to Mars. And you're talking about having a 1967.
Yeah, in that setting, where do you think will be the meeting point between the social media, which has become, is here with us, is democratized media, and of course is pervasive, and there is no way we could hide from it. How can there be a meeting point between literary content and the social media, so that we'll begin to see how our people will be able to read what they will want to read? I feel appalled as a literary scholar that people are talking for now about Olodo uprising and all that. And the people that tend to be trending, content creators now, are people that in some ways do not even have content themselves. And we know that you can't give what you do not have. I know at a point growing up where the likes of Shoyinka had to go to interview Achebe to create content for people out there. And the world was seeing that. Now, dropouts here and there are the models creating content for our children. Where would the average writer come in to rescue using the social media in order to create the right content that will have right value for our children?
First, it has to be writing the right content in the first instance. What are you writing? What is the quality of what you do? Like when we write our books, for example, at Literary Media, what we publish, these are very deep, authentic, original, well-researched work. What we now did was we now translated them into a narrative system, a narrative way that people can consume it and use the information to drive home. So, for example, VAP law, we explored that. Abolition of the OSU, we are exploring that. Now, this one about children being identified as witches and calling our children witches, which is what we call a identity and tribal distortion. We want to begin to address it. So if we're going to also make this content more into the space of social media, we need the government's buy-in to create the kind of trust fund, right, or grants, for that matter, that will help us push some of this information out there. Because we have the money. Delta State gets several billions of naira every month from FAC. It's insane how many trillions of naira come to Delta State. If you take only 1% of that amount of several trillions of naira or even billions of naira every month dedicated to giving authentic publishers like us and other very sound scholars, researchers, authors like you and every other person, what will happen is you will now galvanize a wake-up call. You will now awaken in all of us the need for us to champion information that really will elevate our people so that we can cover the ideological and also miseducation and misinformation distortion prevalent in our society. Even our tribal identity, we can also ensure that that division is reduced. In fact, recently we just launched what is called the Niger Ethno-Barometer Project Unify database. It's the first ever in Nigeria. Nobody has done it. We at Literary Media, along with another innovative organization, we are working together to see to it that we begin to address some of these issues. Why is this important? If you wake up as a child and you grew up in a home where your mama and papa will be using words like saying, anybody from Igbo is like this. Anybody from Hausa is like this. Anybody from Isoko or Urubu is like this. You have distorted.
They are sowing a seed in
you are sowing prejudice in them.
Hatred,
for that tribe. Exactly.
Dichotomy of society.
And that was why the NYSC was set up. The NYSC was good. And what are our children doing? Recently, the NYC has just come to say we are going to revamp many things. It was a good policy. For me, I see some good aspects in that policy. What we should now do is now use things like literature to begin to drive all of those kinds of story. We should now use things like database collection to now see what do we have here to all the tribal identity solutions, distortions, to the economic distortions. Because like we said, when we talk about economy, for example, many people don't know that Delta State earns so many billions in fact, right? But how are these money spent? Are they only on roads? What about other industries? We have over 23 moribund industries in Delta State. That's an economic distortion. Asaba alone, if you look at Asaba here, what is serving here? You have a service industry, and that is not enough. A service industry does not drive where industrialization does not occur.
Okay, maybe we can now put in perspective the issue of literature and vivid creation of characters. You know, in a literature class in India, an undergraduate looking at Okonkwo as a character in Things Fall Apart shouted, "They are writing about my father." He saw everything about that in the father and not about somebody elsewhere. You know, some persons look at the mental health and all that. And you look around, even in the city of Asaba, you see youth struggling with mental health, thinking that they can stabilize with the use of drugs and all that. You know, so in what way do you think, okay, of course, we know literature is a slice of life.
Yes.
You know, running from this reality in society. But in what way do you think your creative works can help to further expose this and bring about a cure? Because at the end of the day, we do not want our children to turn lunatics.
Any child who is experiencing the issue with drugs, with scam, or cultism, or all of these other vices, the reason why that child is easily attracted or easily targeted is because they already have within them a value and ethical distortion. So their ethical principles and the values that they have been taught from their home has not been strong enough to give them what is called the mental resilience, right? And the emotional regulation to be able to push external pressure that tells them that go with us, do as we are doing. This is the trend. This is what is reigning. Join the bandwagon.
Okay.
When a father and a mother is absent in the life of children, when it comes to instilling important ethical and important principle and values in them, what will happen is somebody else will train that child for you. Many parents will tell me, I have met general managers of banks, of other industries, and when I hear them tell me, Lady E, I have paid for the school. That's why I paid so much for the school. The school is supposed to do that for me. I said, this is where you fail.
Abdication of responsibility.
Abdication of responsibility.
Oh, yes.
Money cannot pay for everything.
Yeah.
Money is not the answer to everything. Sometimes it is your time. It is your presence. It is your mental acuteness.
And your exemplary conduct.
And your exemplary conduct which
Yeah.
your children see.
Yeah.
Sometimes people say, bad children are a product of society. Sometimes I say, wait, don't go too far. If you look at a child, you will see that they have borrowed one or two things from their parents that they just took the worst of its kind and then they multiplied it in reality.
Okay. So now we've seen great works of art. Again, I'm forced to go back to...
and before we jump into that,
yeah.
let us remember that only children who are good readers, check out the difference between them.
Okay.
One, they are not easily manipulated. Why? Because they are not exposed to digital and false information.
Okay, a quick one on that. Do you envisage this your award-winning book talking about distortion, getting into cinema?
Oh yeah, there's been conversations about that, cinematic considerations and all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll keep that on the wraps. It's going to come out.
We look forward to that.
We look forward to that, right?
Okay.
All right. Thank
So
you.
to what extent, too, as we begin to see how to round up, to what extent has your literary prowess, literary excellence translated in our society and climb into, financial prowess, financial stability? And please, maybe we are live, but I need to hear this because sometimes I call you, you say I'm not in Nigeria. Sometimes I call you, you are in a conference in Kenya and all that. So don't tell the viewers lie, but don't also lie to me. Your award, your literary award, to what extent has it translated into, so that we encourage young people it's not only through scamming that they can. We need to let them know that education is not a scam. That through writing, somebody can also live a profitable life. So can you just tell us, what's your net worth now?
I will give you a story of what happened last time at the Press Center Government House, Asaba.
Okay.
A young man came all the way from Isoko. He came for this event, for the first ever Delta State, which is called Spoken Word Poetry.
Yeah.
I told him, come. The young man came. He performed so excellently. Do you know what he has now gotten from that singular thing? He is 17 years old. Do you know what he got? He's an orphan. And right there at the venue, immediately after his performance, he was met by certain individuals. If the university asked him what are several thousands of naira for that performance, and his transportation was also paid for.
So somebody out there, education is not a scam. And you are hearing it from Lady E herself.
So on that day alone, that boy has won over 500 million.
Creativity still pays. Even when I recognize that she dodged my question about her net worth.
Oh, we are much more than that. If I tell you how much we have sold in terms of this book, and that's why we're saying that this next one, every one of you has
it's
a recommended test in Delta State.
Yes.
So, I mean, parents understand the value of this book, they go for it. Yeah. And this one too, we're telling everybody who really know value for their children, because we are helping our children to fight back all the pressure from everybody who wants to twist their identity.
In fact, my executive producer says this show must round up now. So it's on that note that I thank you for coming. And viewer out there, thank you so very much for keeping a date with Press Center on Dott Television. See you same time next week. Stay blessed. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, do it. No, overtry.
We impose extra burden on the masses. I feel your pain.
Only humility will lead us to unity, and unity will lead us to peace.
Go to the market and sell your products.